Hello, I'm Carol Van Ornum of the Civil War Roundtable Congress. I'm joined today by Tim Vane, who is with the Knoxville Roundtable. Tim, thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure, Carol.
The Civil War Roundtable Congress created an initiative to interview roundtable leaders for the purpose of sharing with the rest of the roundtable community their successes and their challenges. We also hope that they will offer ideas and perspectives that will help others grow. So let's start with you, Tim. Tell us a little bit about your background, your career, your education, and how you got interested in the Civil War.
Well, I was born in New York City, and then we moved to Connecticut when I was 5. And I went through elementary school and high school in the city of Stamford, Connecticut. I went to college in Philadelphia. I went to LaSalle College, and it had an ROTC detachment. I joined that and then was on active duty for 20 plus years. Retired from the Army and came to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where I worked for the Oak Ridge National Laboratory for 16 years. And then retired from that and then started 2 separate small businesses, which I just shut down last year. So I am now officially retired. My interest in the Civil War began characteristically, I suppose, for a child who was born in the 50s, in the mid-60s, during the centennial of the Civil War, where I read a book called Heroes in Blue and Gray, which featured a Confederate and Union infantryman rifle to rifle across a parapet, and thinking that was just the coolest thing in the world as a 10-year-old. And from that, I began to read and read and read, and it has been a lifelong pursuit ever since I was 10 years old.
So what is your position within your roundtable, and how long have you been a member?
Currently, I am the director of community activities. I joined the roundtable in 2018 and have held this position every year since then up to the present.
And when you did join, what was your assessment of the roundtable?
Well, I thought it was wonderful. I mean, the speakers were terrific. We have a dinner and a lecture the second Tuesday of every month, and I found the topics engaging, the speakers knowledgeable, and the membership to be driven. I mean, there was a lot of people who were sitting on the edge of their seats during the course of these presentations, and when the author presenter was done, they asked very pointed, interesting questions. And I thought to myself, well, here's a group of people I could get along with. And so I began to really look forward to each one of these presentations. And of course, after the presentation, that would spark a question in your own mind. And so I'd go and do research on that. And so it was a way after a working life to get back into a topic that I was always interested in, but now had time to pursue. So I started to do it in earnest, and then gradually came to the position, well, if you're going to actually do this, then you really ought to do more with it. And so that's when I decided to join the board.
Tell me more about the governance of your organization. I know it's pretty sophisticated.
Well, thank you for saying that. We have a 14-person board, and we are, president, vice president, and director of programming, and a variety of other things associated with the running of that. And so the board meets every other month and takes on the issues that every roundtable has to face. What direction are we going? How are we going to get there? What's the programming look like, and all the rest of it? But there seems to be more of a hands-on approach, that people are open to good ideas. And so that if you have an idea, unfortunately, I'm in a position of community activities where I can do things with the board's approval, just because it's my job to engage other organizations outside the roundtable. And so but I can't do anything obviously without board approval, especially if money's involved. And so we have robust discussions about, well, should we pursue this angle, or how about this, or what about those kinds of things? And I have to say, the board they are good checks applying common sense, but there's not a lot of, oh no, we can't do that, or no, we won't do that, or we've never done that before, so we shouldn't try. There's a openness and willingness to exchange and debate before we decide to do something. And in many cases, the feedback I've gotten from them has helped modify what I originally thought, because sometimes you're not your own best counsel. And people will say, well, that's a good idea, but why don't you try this versus that? And then I get even with them by saying, well, okay, now that we've all agreed to this, you can all help me do what I just said to do. And invariably, there has been robust support on the part of the board to help me orchestrate these things, and then they help me execute that. And so I am very thankful for our board for being open-minded and then willing participants in the activities that we undertake.
What kinds of challenges do you face, though?
Well, like every roundtable, I suppose, is trying to get more members involved in doing things, and not just board members doing things. And so we have had good success with getting numbers of people to help us do things. For example, there are 2 Civil War, actually more than 2, Civil War cemeteries in Knoxville. And there are national cemeteries, but these are not national cemeteries. We have one cemetery called Bethel Cemetery where Confederates are buried. And then we have another cemetery, coincidentally on the same street, virtually right next to each other, called Oddfellows Cemetery, which is an historically Black cemetery, but has in it United States colored troops buried. There's a significant number of soldiers buried there. So we thought, as part of our ongoing commitment to the city and our mission, which is the preservation and commemoration of our Civil War heritage, these cemeteries get kind of neglected over time. And so we contacted the people who oversee these things, the groundskeepers or neighborhood folks responsible for them, and said, we'd like to help. We'd like to make a commitment to you that once a quarter, we're going to come here and we're going to help do whatever it is you want done to make your cemetery as clean and as neat and as organized, to preserve the memory of those who fought, irrespective of side, because we don't take sides. We look at the war as a whole, and under their direction, we work. And board members work, and we've gotten members to work. So it's been a wonderful way to preserve the memory of these soldiers, but engage our local communities to be able to say, you know, we just don't do one and done. We're here for the duration, and we come back once a quarter.
How many members do you have?
Right now, we have about 150. Yeah, I mean, that number fluctuates all the time, but last time I checked, the number was 156. But day to day, who knows what that number actually is.
So, what do you think is your most shining or valuable moment or accomplishment that you've had?
Well, I would say that the roundtable would say that the thing that we are proudest of is this web of relationships we've developed over time. I mean, we not only work with the Confederate and Union cemeteries, we have those sister cities that that I guess we're going to talk about with regard to sharing speakers and that kind of stuff. But we also have this web of relationships with like-minded organizations like us, like county museums and Civil War specific locations like the Longstreet Museum in Russellville, Tennessee. And so we've developed this web of relationship over time, again, so that we can do things together better than we can individually. So we go to talk to them, they come to talk to us. we're in schools. We talk to JROTCs a lot. You're trying to develop, as a matter of fact, next week I have a meeting with the Knox County schools to see what we can do to help them in understanding the American Civil War. We have a relationship with the city of Knoxville to rebuild a Civil War battlefield. There was a small fight called the Battle of Armstrong Hill south of the city across the river, and there was 3 brigades, 2 Confederate brigades and 1 Union brigade that were locked in a 5 or 6 hour battle. Well, the city owns the property, but they don't really know all that much about where the fighting took place. So we're going to help them find the locations and help them work out how to make it a park where people can come and visit that. And then we can tie that in with other Civil War locations throughout the city. So that partnership with the city of Knoxville, I think, is going to be invaluable. And then we also have a relationship with the East Tennessee Historical Society, where we interact with them, and they once a year have an award program where we get to showcase our Dot Kelly Preservation Grant Award winners. Dot Kelly, Dorothy Kelly, was a founding member of the Roundtable, and she did a lot of instrumental work in preserving Civil War sites in the greater Knoxville area that were about to be lost. And so because of her dedicated work to doing that, we have honored her by going out to organizations and saying, we'll give you a $500 grant to preserve or commemorate some aspect of the Knoxville Civil War. Now, this ties in with that web of relationships because it's not just Knoxville, it's East Tennessee. So people, excuse me, people in Russellville, people in Farragut, people in Jefferson County, they can offer their ideas for what they would do. It goes to the board, they decide, and they get the money. Similarly, last year, we just started the same thing with JROTC programs in the Knoxville school system. And so those cadets now have an opportunity to learn about American history by preserving it or commemorating it, and we give them a $500 grant to execute that project that they designed. So those are the kinds of things that we do. We also have a Living History Weekend in November, which is tied to the Battle of Fort Dickerson. Fort Dickerson was on the south side of Knoxville again. That Longstreet tried to send his cavalry through when he came up, and they were blocked at Fort Dickerson. And Fort Dickerson is a wonderfully preserved fort from that period of time. And every year we, in essence, have an open house with the city of Knoxville that allows us to do this, where we have reenactments, we have infantry displays, medical displays, music, all that other kinds of thing, where the citizens of Knoxville can begin to understand a little bit about the relationship the city had with the Civil War and recognize that, it's our common heritage and they should learn more about it. And we try to do this so it doesn't interfere with the University of Tennessee football weekend, but we can't always do that. But the good news is Fort Dickerson overlooks Neyland Stadium, so you can look in and on the game periodically. So those are the things we're proudest of. It's just that we think that we are a viable part of the Knoxville, but particularly the Knoxville history.
I have 2 questions for you. Going back to the Living History Weekend, is all of the resources coming from your roundtable, or are you partnering with other organizations such as reenactors units or?
Right, but all of the resources come from the roundtable, but we do partner with local reenacting units and local reenactors who have specialized interests, particularly medical. For example, the medical stuff is always very interesting, particularly to the kids, about how and when did they go to the doctor and what did they do and battle injuries and all the rest. But we also have people who have worked on Civil War cannon detachments, and so there are 3 cannons in the fort itself. We don't shoot them, but we put people through cannon drills so they understand what that's like. And so there's all of these kinds of activities that we do, but it is our responsibility. We put it on. The city is gracious enough to help us clean the park up so that it's presentable and it's safe. But no, that's all a Knoxville Civil War Roundtable show.
Can you expand on getting into the schools and the ROTC education system? I know a lot of roundtables struggle with trying to reach out to students.
Well, I'll let you know more after next week. As my role of director of community activities, and based upon my active duty experience, I have contacted the commanders, if you will, of the JROTC unit. So it's been more from me to the JROTC than me to the schools. Although, I've let the schools know that I'm doing this, and we've had actually the directors of these continuing technical education programs that oversee JROTC, and we started to go through that process. But people leave jobs and people move, and so consequently, even though you can start and you stay the same, other people have job mobility and all the rest. So sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But in the interim, though, you can I have spent time in 2 school systems, in 3 different schools about doing that. So it's just a one-on-one kind of thing, because the JROTC instructors, it helps them by showing their students what's come before them, particularly in a town that has Civil War history as a part of it. And it's a way to engage students by saying, this isn't some abstraction. This happened right here in your neighborhood, in your town, and it's worth knowing about. And that way, when you go to a mall or something like that, the road that the mall fronts on was actually a Civil War battlefield. Matter of fact, in Knoxville, one of the city high schools' baseball field is located on a portion of a Civil War battlefield.
Is there someone in your sphere that has been a mentor or an inspiration to you?
Well, the board and our members have inspired me, because we have people in our membership who have written books. We have people in our membership who have tremendous libraries, collections. There's a lot of knowledge in every Civil War roundtable, I would bet. And by engaging people, they inspire you with their stories. They know a lot. And consequently, it enriches the entire experience, because you engage with people who are really interested in the same topics and have maybe been working at it longer than you have. And some guys, like I say, who have literally written the book on a given aspect of the Civil War. And so I'm sure I'm something of a pest, because I call these guys up all the time and said, your book said this and this book said that, or I'm standing on this, and I don't understand how the ground works based upon what you say. And they say, calm down, and they walk me through it from their perspective and their education. So it's really inspiring when you have that level of expertise that you can draw from and have some really interesting conversations that take place long after any board meeting or after any dinner and lecture. And when you do that, you kind of form friendships too. It's like, this guy's really nice. He took the time to spend 40 minutes that he hadn't planned on spending talking to me about whatever topic I get excited about. And so it's just been heartwarming that that's the case. And I would bet that a lot of roundtables, if they they probably have way more expertise sitting out in their audiences than they think they do.
Where do you see your roundtable in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I see two things taking place from the roundtable perspective. First of all, we're going to maintain and expand the relationships we already have. You know, it's easy to make an overture and to check the block and say, I talked to this guy at this place. But that doesn't get a lot done. What it does is it just starts to create the lattice, the spider web, if you will. But the hard part is, okay, now that I know you and you know me, what can we do together? And how do I help you? How do you help me? How do we coordinate so that eventually, which is my second point, we can create something really unique with the Knoxville Civil War Roundtable taking perhaps a special role by being a coordinator for all of this, all of these different organizations, so that you can take a string and you can go from Huff's Ferry on Interstate 75, which crosses the Tennessee River, and take it all the way through Knoxville and up to Virginia or over to North Carolina and be able to say, we have created this wonderful coordinated tool where anybody coming to East Tennessee can visit any one of these battle locations and understand what took place there and why, where it was in the context of a campaign. That's what I would like to see us be able to do. And I don't mean to minimize the challenge beyond doing it, but it would be great because it would be wonderful if people could say Knoxville Civil War Roundtable had a significant role in making Knoxville a Civil War destination because of the unique spot that Knoxville played in the war from November 1863 to April 1864. And it's also particularly important because Lincoln never forgot East Tennessee. He was constantly after his generals to help the people of East Tennessee because in Tennessee, East Tennessee remained largely loyal to Lincoln, and he wanted to support that and help them and liberate them. And so forgotten in all of this is Mr. Lincoln and his desire to help people who supported the Union. And I think this is just a wonderfully rich place to do all that, but it's in pieces. And I would like to be a significant player in that effort to put your arms around all of that and say, if you want to understand East Tennessee, you got to come to Knoxville because we got these forts, we got the Civil War trails, we got this museum, we got that museum. Everybody knows what the other guy is doing, and we help each other by doing it. Now, easy to say, hard to do.
With all of those other organizations that you're working with, have you considered a sister Civil War Roundtable?
Well, we have a sister relationship with two other roundtables, the Tri-Cities in Kingsport and Cumberland Mountain in Crossville. And you'll have to look at the map to see how all that works. But so we have, I mean, we share speakers, we share information, we do some things together. The harder part are county museums and that kind of stuff are smaller. They don't have big budgets. A guy comes in once or twice a week and opens up, that kind of thing. That makes it harder. And it doesn't, at least my understanding, it doesn't quite fit the definition of sister. We're trying to do that with roundtables, but these other smaller things, it's going to require a unique way to put all that together that we need to work on.
Those would be cousins.
Right. Well, I mean, a familial relationship would be ideal over time, right? I mean, it would be great to be able to say, I can call this guy at some place and he can help me do that and all those other kinds of things. But I mean, that's going to take a lot of consistent effort over a long period of time. So it almost becomes like muscle movement, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, so I can pull the guy in from Russellville and one guy from Bean Station, and we can do something together. but we're open to any help or any ideas anybody might have.
Then would you consider doing the sustainability challenge that the Civil War Congress has put out?
Well, of course, but you know, I guess in our own way, I mean, we internal to ourselves, we're doing sustainability stuff. I mean, you know, we're trying to recruit, we're trying to do marketing, we're developing these webs of partnerships internal, but that doesn't mean, nor does it mean that we won't think beyond that. It's just, you know, how do we do all that? And the obvious way, I suppose, to do sustainability is to work with our sister organizations and do other things. You know, I guess what you could say is have more of a connection with the the mothership roundtable, you know, and in doing those kinds of things, because a lot of times I think we're little groups off by ourselves, and I know you all are trying to unify that and put strings through it, but we could do a better job of doing that.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your roundtable?
Well, everybody's invited to come visit us whenever they're in the greater Knoxville area, that's for sure. Second Tuesday of every month, we have a dinner and a lecture, that's for sure. But I guess the one thing I would say is it's as much a reminder to me as it would be to anybody else is the Civil War is our common American heritage. It is the one thing that we all share in common, whether you're 85 years old or you've just put up your right hand and sworn your oath as a citizen. It is ours. It is our legacy. And a lot of times, I think people forget that. I heard one historian say, maybe it was Shelby Foote, who said, you know, the United States at that point in time was nothing but a big adolescent. And we went through this trauma as an adolescent, which set the tone for American history from that point forward. And remembering the importance it played in the development of the country sometimes is forgotten based upon our headlong American rush towards the future. And if you forget the past, you forget important lessons. You get the people who fought, and you forget to understand what they went through. And if you don't preserve the places where they fought, it diminishes your understanding of the almost apocalyptic events that took place that almost drove this country apart. And so keeping roundtables going and keeping that knowledge alive, that preservation and commemoration is extraordinarily important and guides what we do with all of this stuff. Because you always got to come back to your mission statement, right? I mean, why else are you in business? And you have to, that's the star you steer by. And so we always look at what we do through the lens of what our mission statement is and try and find ways that uniquely reach different segments of the public in and around Knoxville to allow them to come and talk to them about our joint heritage and invite them to participate with us. Are we successful? Some of the time. We're not as successful as we like if you look at success in terms of numbers, but maybe we're successful because we generate interest and we show people, tell people, remind people that history just didn't begin with you. There's a lot of people who come who don't remember that. And I always have a great deal of joy when people come up to me after I give a talk on some aspect of the Civil War and tell me about an ancestor they had. And that based upon my talk, they're going to go back and do some more work about their ancestor or find out more or something. And so it's a way just to engage people and to remind them that the past isn't really the past.
Thank you, Tim, so much. I really enjoyed talking with you.
My pleasure, Carol. Thank you for thinking of us and inviting us to participate in this wonderful Congress of yours and ours. And we, of course, will participate and help however we can, not only the mothership, but any other roundtable that would like to engage with us.